Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
This is nicer than my house. Today we're covering one of the most watched races in the U.S. House, the North Carolina race for the 7th District, pitting Republican challenger Hilario Pantano against incumbent Democrat Mike McIntyre. Thanks for tuning in. It's another hour-long special Byline Election 2010 to help you decide how to spend your vote. In this segment, Hilario Pantano is joining us. Incumbent Mike McIntyre will follow. Hilario, thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Last time I saw you in person was when we interviewed you for Warlord.
Right, I was talking about my book, which had just been released, and in fact, in 2006, I was the only book out there talking about victory in Iraq. Of course, the other best-selling book on Iraq was Fiasco, so it shows how I've always been to one end of the political spectrum.
Right now, I'm hearing a lot of people on both sides of the aisle complaining about the tone and the substance of political advertising from both parties. The stuff they're being bombarded with, they call it negativity and misinformation. Do you think these kinds of political techniques demean the process?
I think that the process has changed over time, and part of that, I think, is the nature of technology and media. I think that all of the discourse has gotten more shrill, and that's unfortunate. Look at the fact that there had been a 40-year majority in the Congress, and then a 12-year majority, and then a 4-year majority, and now we're getting ready to...
Recycling it faster and faster?
I think that we are. So between Twitter, Facebook, 500-channel, 24/7 media universe, now everyone's an expert. How do you get heard? You have to go louder. That's forcing the whole thing to become more shrill.
What about the debate on whether, on transparency and giving to parties and candidates that...
The debate, Don, I think
does the public have the right to know who's giving money to?
I think what's so fascinating about the debate about money and candidacies is that when President Obama was raising more money than had ever been raised in elections in history, I mean, if you remember, the amount that he raised was like Carolina scoring 200 points in a game.
Parties aside.
It changed, but just to close the loop,
should the public have the right to know who's giving money to candidates and organizations that are buying political advertising?
Absolutely, and I think that there's no question that that we saw in 2008, we saw all kinds of money, all kinds of foreign money, whether it was George Soros or unions, and of course the irony of union monies is that so many of these unions now are state and federally funded, so in fact it's even taxpayer money being recycled back.
So both sides of the aisle should be more transparent?
I think that transparency always serves us.
Is there an extreme political divide in the country, and if there is, has it slowed down the progress of getting what needs to be done accomplished?
I don't know if there's an extreme political divide in the country. I think there's an extreme political divide in the media, which has allowed the shrillness to be exacerbated. I think that America as a nation is a conservative nation that is center-right, and I think certainly this district, which is what I'm focused on, is very conservative and is very center-right.
So you think it's a media hype that there's an extreme divide in the country?
I think to a degree there's a fabrication, which is part of the process. It's part of how you sell airtime. You need to have challengers come on and butt heads, and you need exciting television. If it bleeds, it leads, and we see that in the political discourse.
So the culture in Washington doesn't need change?
I think the culture in Washington needs a lot of things. I think we need some fiscal responsibility, first and foremost. I'm less interested in the tone of the debate as opposed to the efficacy of America as a power and what our economy looks like. Those are the issues, the substantial issues that I want to talk about. But culturally, the shrillness, again, is part of the fact that there was a time 30 years ago when there was a 30-minute segment a day devoted to news. Now it's 24/7, 500-channel universe, and everyone needs to scream.
Is there a gridlock in Washington?
I don't know if I would call it gridlock. I think that you've got right now a party, a majority, an administration that is avowedly liberal, a Senate that is avowedly liberal led by Harry Reid, a Congress avowedly liberal led by Nancy Pelosi, whose congressional district when she goes to campaign is in San Francisco, doesn't represent the values of southeastern North Carolina. I think to the extent that a liberal majority has hijacked the direction of the country, there are conservatives there are conservatives that are rightly standing very staunchly for their beliefs and for their ideas, and sometimes there's room for compromise and sometimes there isn't. Some things are right or they're not, and sometimes there is no room in the middle, and it'll be a question of where ultimately we need to be as a nation. And I think what's happening is that the conservative voice is coming back very loudly, and I think that we're going to see a return to the center right.
There's a question of whether the House will be, who will control the House. if the Republicans don't control the House, how do you go to Washington and change, get the change that you want instituted?
Well, I think first and foremost, the role of a representative is to actually represent the people of the 7th District. And the 7th District is inherently conservative. We supported John McCain as a presidential candidate. We supported George Bush twice. And I give you that because despite the fact that there's a significant majority of Democrat registration here, the Democrats here are conservative Democrats, and the Republicans certainly conservative. The independents are conservative. Folks in southeastern North Carolina are conservative. And to the extent that their voice is being heard, that their conservative ideas are being not just advocated for, but being defended and being fought for, whatever party controls the majority, what I'm going to offer is somebody who's actually going to fight for the ideals that we hold here and not allow them to be railroaded like the Obamacare bill or cap and tax and other things.
Term limits.
Thank you for asking. Yeah. That's something that I feel very strongly about. I think that term limits are an important part of reforming our congressional process. I have bonded my term limit. In fact, I actually signed a pledge, my wife and I both. We bonded the value of our home that I would run for no more than 6 terms, and that's the equivalent of 2 terms in the Senate. My opponent had actually signed a document in 1996 saying that he thought term limits were important, and then he broke his word and he ran for a 7th term, and now he's broken his word again and he's running for an 8th term. And part of the argument is, well, he was asked by constituents is how he would explain it, and what I would offer to you is Charlie Rangel at 40 years in the Congress is a great case in point. At some point, you stop being part of the solution and you become part of the problem. Where is that point? How much time is enough time to accomplish what you need to do to reform the Congress?
Some people would say that, you know, voting is a term limit. People vote for you, they can vote yes or no.
That is the ideal in which our country was based upon, but the realities today are that the moment you are an incumbent, as my opponent is, he has $1 million war chest. He's raised $400,000 from labor unions. So we have raised almost $1 million now ourselves, and you know how we've done it? From individuals here in the district and around the country, but from individuals, $5, $20, $1,000, from folks that are conservatives that want to see their values represented in Washington. I even had somebody in Arizona say to me, Ilario, I can't vote for you, but when you go to Washington, you're going to vote for my family. You're going to vote for all of us, because today the national level issues really do shape the discourse. But what you see with incumbency is that the moment you are the member of Congress, every organization in the country and the world is writing you a check to curry your favor, and so you've got $1 million and you're safe. And the voters out there don't have an opportunity to really challenge you or your record unless a real challenger comes.
When we come back, stay with us. Ilario Pantano will talk about his stand on Social Security. Don't go away.